It has been 8 years. We were just talking about your son. He's grown up with you in the office. All three of your kids
That's
have.
right.
How would you describe the 8 years in office?
It's been a good experience. The thing I've enjoyed really the most about it is, and this is coming from someone that is an introvert by nature, but just out in public, interacting with people, they recognize me, and people come and they want to talk about garbage service or potholes, but mostly people just want to say hello. So I've really enjoyed the experience of interacting with the citizens, the people of Jacksonville for the last 8 years.
I mean, 8 years, there's been a lot of things that have happened in this city, and I've been here for all of them, which is kind of unusual. I mean, that doesn't happen all the time either. So, it's kind of an end of an era, right? So how would do you have a top accomplishment or a top couple of accomplishments? What would you consider to be your biggest success or successes?
Well, it's not a sexy issue, but we would not have accomplished any of the stuff we have without pension reform. You'll remember my second year in office, we fully funded through a revenue source our public service employee pensions, and we made pension reform changes there. Because of that reform, we've had close to $1 billion that we've invested in the city that we would not have otherwise had. We had no money before I got into office because of pension costs. The infrastructure budget the year before I got into office was $20 million. My last infrastructure budget was over $300 million. So people that like their parks, their sidewalks, their roads, police, funding the fire department, we would have not been able to do any of that without pension reform. And I think also the creation of the Kids Hope Alliance is really important. That's an organization that serves young people. It's during the summer and year-round, with reading, with summer programs, with activities, and with jobs programs as well. So that's been really important.
I had a feeling you'd say pension because that is a big deal. I know in the last couple of weeks and even the last couple of months, there's been some talk about changing that. Any words of wisdom as you leave office on some of these prospective changes? Sure.
So in order to do pension reform the way we did it, we had to get the Florida legislature to sign off on it and the governor to sign it. And with that, there was an intent when they wrote that legislation. And that intent would be that we take new hires out of traditional pensions and put them in basically 401k type plans. Had I not agreed to that, the legislature would have never signed off. So it will be very difficult. Well, two things. If they go back to old school pension plans, they lose the half penny that's funding all the pensions now. They're going to lose billions of dollars in funding. The budget that they have to do infrastructure and city services, it'll be crippled. If they try to do another plan like FRS, I personally believe, based on my interactions with the legislature, that is in direct conflict with their intent when they sponsored those bills. But it's up to the next administration to work through that stuff and negotiate it.
Right, but the bottom line is you're of the opinion that the deal you got is kind of the best deal you're going to get.
The city battled this for years. You guys had it on your network all the time before I got into office. It was in the local newspaper all the time, front page. And certainly other administrations tinkered around with it, but we came with a comprehensive solution, and it's working.
Yeah, I guess the argument would be, how do you attract good talent, right? And
that's not an issue.
That's not an issue.
If anyone looks at the data, they'll see that's not an issue.
Okay, interesting.
Yep.
So in other words, police, fire are not having trouble finding enough good people.
That's correct. And they're retaining them as well.
And retaining them.
Yeah, but the new plans they're in are, they're plans that they're rich, as they should be for our public service of folks that are first responders. So they provide a great retirement.
And of course, Jacksonville is not the only city that's had to deal with pension reform. In fact, almost every major city.
And many cities are still facing it.
That's correct.
And it is crippling their budgets as well.
Okay, so in other words, the need to tinker with this success, in your opinion, isn't even needed at the very beginning, because you're saying we don't need to make it more attractive.
That's right. And pension reform not only gave us cash to do these projects, it gave us the ability to borrow responsibly. We've paid down $500 million in debt approximately since I've gotten into office. But if you do a stadium deal, which you're going to need to have a source of revenue, you're going to need to borrow at some level. Without this pension reform, there is no There is no the city getting the Jacksonville Landing back. Where would the money come from a major deal for a stadium? The next administration is going to have to figure that out if they try to undo pension reform. I don't think I've heard that.
There's a stadium deal. I hadn't heard about that. You said no, but you hadn't heard. I'm sorry. Let's go back.
No.
I was making a joke, but you hadn't heard what now?
I haven't heard. I've heard they're looking at I haven't heard anyone say they're looking to undo the pension reform.
Yes, but you know what you've
yeah,
heard the same thing I've heard.
There are discussions that I would be very careful.
Yeah.
Make sure you don't want to lose that source of revenue, because you will have no money to invest in our city.
Right. Okay. So those are two big hits. Is there anything that you in 8 years? I mean, it's bound to happen. Is there anything you wish you'd done differently?
Look, I go when I decide I want to make a decision to do something. I understand I believe it's going to work out. If it does, if it doesn't, there's going to be consequences, and I'm okay with that. I would say, look, I believe you have to fight for what you believe in, and you have to be really aggressive. We would not have passed pension reform, for example, without my go-get-it kind of nature. But what I have learned over the years is everything doesn't have to be a fight. So I wouldn't say I would do it differently. I say that I've learned that there are some issues that can be dealt with a little more delicate hand.
Fair enough.
And I would probably tweet less.
Less, not tweet, but less.
Less.
Okay,
less combative stuff at times.
Okay.
And for those of you that can't see what's happening off of camera, the person that's ahead of my public affairs is smiling and saying yes. Yes.
A lot of what we're discussing with this stadium deal, and let's be honest, this is the big talk of the town for certainly, and also, of course, as we transition to a new administration, it is going to be one of, if not the single biggest things to deal with. Safety is obviously always an issue. But did the Lot J situation, because JEA wasn't going to move there, and there's other the other things going on there, but was that inability to get JEA as the main tenant the reason we're looking at the entertainment, like the reason it seems like that plan has dwarfed at all?
I've never heard. No one's ever said that to me. I've never been a part of that conversation.
Okay.
And I would remind, the Lot J failed, but we have 19 council members. You usually need 10 votes, which is a majority.
Right.
We needed 13 for Lot J. Right. We got 12. There was politics involved. I'll take my share of the blame for the politics. There were personality conflicts. There were people that voted against that believed in the deal, but didn't want this office to get the win. But what's done is done.
But you're suggesting that you haven't heard that because that failed, getting that started when it was going to get started, that didn't change what we're looking at now with.
That's correct. It did not.
I guess I'll call it the extra entertainment package
that was always a part of Lot J.
Okay.
Yeah, and I traveled to other cities and looked at those entertainment centers in previous years.
Okay.
In Atlanta and in St. Louis.
Okay.
Yeah,
I remember those trips. But
yeah.
Okay. All right. So, the president, as he leaves a note for his replacement. Is there any kind of tradition in Jacksonville where you will leave something for Mayor like Deegan, or will you start your own tradition, or any advice, those kinds of things?
Yeah, I'm going to leave something, and I haven't really formulated it yet because I don't want it to be advice per se, because when you sit in this chair, you have to be your own person and make your own decisions. That may actually be one of the top. At the end of the day, with all the people that are going to want to give you advice, it's your decision and your decision alone. This is a strong mayor form of government, and if your decisions work, it's great. If they don't, it's all on you. And then I would also say family time. Do not let this office value your family time. It can easily creep in, and whatever your normal routines are, keep them. Mine's exercise. That's how I stay straight. I know the mayor-elect is a runner, so my advice was do not let people take away your running time.
Good advice for anybody, really.
Right.
Okay, finally, and this I might be bearing the lead here, but a lot of people are going to want to know, and you and I've talked about this over the years, what is next for you?
So I'm going to do some private sector business stuff. I was in business before I got into this office. My oldest is going to college. My son's going to college in August. folks may remember in my inauguration, he was a little boy and he blew a bubble on stage at the swearing in that ended up on the front page of the local newspaper. So I'm going to go back to work for a while, but politically, I've been decades involved in politics. I'm going to keep working with statewide candidates, local candidates, and national candidates to get good people elected. I don't wake up wanting to be on a ballot every day. However, if the right door opens, I would say I've never lost an election. I've won 2 mayoral elections. I won a pension reform that was on the ballot, was elected state chairman of the Republican Party twice, elected local chairman multiple times. So if I choose to go on the ballot, we know what we're doing.
So you're open to the idea of running for office again?
I would not close that door. But I'm not burning. It's not, I don't have a fire right now for something specific, but I've got too much invested to, if I can be of service somewhere, I would look at it.
When you say you're going back to the private sector, did you ever absolve your business? Like, you owned a business.
I exited that business.
You exited, so you sold that.
I did.
So
I'll do something completely new.
You must have something lined up.
I'm working on it.
Okay. You don't want to scoop me. You don't want to give me the lowdown on that.
I can't.
Okay. Okay.
But a couple weeks out, we'll have it all ironed out.
All right. And as far as public office, is anybody asking you to run for anything in particular?
Yeah, look, I know folks that have that invest in campaigns and invest in good candidates. They want to see good government, and folks have talked to me about offices. I mean, I looked at Congress last year, and they've talked about other statewide offices, but there's nothing there right now to really consider. So it's flattering to know that there are folks that would be interested in investing in another campaign. We just have to see what happens, and then I'd have to have a conversation with my family. At this point, the family wants me out of public service.
Yeah, it's been 8 years.
Right.
They kind of want you back.
And that's really why I decided against that congressional seat last year. Mm-hmm. We got to the point where the family was okay with it, but I realized, I'm going to be traveling to D.C. all the time. I'll have 2 kids that are still in high school, and it just wasn't the right time. Is there any other office that would appeal to you in the meantime? I mean, there are statewide offices. I think my skill set really is the executive decision making. So I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily say the legislative branch is an absolute no, but I would lean towards more of an executive role. So a governor. That's an executive role. It is. Last I checked. And of course, we have a governor. We do. That could change. But the timing of that doesn't change anything. If our governor runs for and becomes president of the United States, the lieutenant governor will be governor for the remainder of the term, and then a bunch of Republicans will be figuring out who's going to run in a primary. Right. So. But you could be one of those people. Doors are never closed. Well said. All right. But I'm not. But I'm not planning or scheming. Yes, that. I understand. I'm not waking up in the morning saying, if that opportunity opens, how do I do it? Who do I talk to? I don't have a fire in the belly for anything politically right now. Yeah. Well, the bottom line is, no matter what happens in the race for presidency, we've got a governor for 2 more years. That's right. 2 more years. That isn't you. That's right. And you have to have I think you should have a real fire in the belly. Campaigns are hard. They're important and they're consequential. So right now I don't have that. But again, it would be unwise to shut the door. Yeah. As far as time-wise is concerned, when would you, you're not going to just decide the governor's seat's going to be open in 2 years. I'll think about that in 2 years. No, you have to have that figured out long before. When's the next election? What are we in? I forget. Today's 20. This is 23. So is it 20? 26. It'd be 26 for the governor. Yeah, so I think probably early 25. Yeah. I think anybody that's looking at it would need to be at least doing behind-the-scenes stuff by early 25, which is a long ways off. Yeah. Well, yes and no. Right. Yes. Right. Yeah. All right. So we'll look for some private sector news from you. Private sector news. That's right. Staying local. Oh yeah, not leaving Jacksonville. And what do you do behind the scenes? Because you're not going to be able to just not be involved. Yeah, well, I'm going to remain engaged. Look, there's folks that have supported me over the years in the business community that care about policy in this town, and we've already talked. I'm going to stay in touch on a regular basis with a group of people. And to the extent that we can be helpful on good policy for Jacksonville, we'll advocate for it.
Or in the future.
Yeah, that I didn't
Yeah.
quite get to that. I alluded to it, but yes, that's a great one. Thank you.
Well, look, there is a crime issue, but when we talk about the murder rate, most of the shootings that are happening in our city and most of the violent crime are happening by a couple hundred, few hundred people. And most of it is criminals on criminals. There have been some terrible circumstances where we've had innocent people caught in the middle of it. But the perception outside of Jacksonville is that it's very dangerous and very violent everywhere in the city, and that's simply not true. So the next mayor is going to have to deal with the real crime that exists, but also the issue that I've dealt with, which is the perception issue. There are cities where you walk down the street and you may get mugged, and that's a known risk. There are cities where you may get jumped. If you're walking around in a part of Jacksonville, it's pretty unlikely that's going to happen. People aren't busting into stores and just, stealing stuff. Jacksonville overall is a safe, responsible city of good people.
So the biggest challenge you say is
crime and the
crime
perception
and
of crime.
perception.
That's right.
Stadium issue, also a big one.
Stadium has to get done. I mean, it has to. We tried. We were working right up to the end. It's a huge task, and it's up to the next administration to negotiate it. But the two parties have to find a way to get it done, and everything that I've seen, they're working towards that. I would say to people that are maybe going to be critical of the deal, and that's fair. It's got to be looked at and criticized. But you have to understand, the ownership of a team and a city can make a deal. That doesn't mean the deal's going to go through, because all the other owners have to vote on it. The NFL has to approve the deal, and they are looking for specific things. So I would say to people, if you're evaluating the deal, is it a fair deal? Is it a deal that taxpayers should get? You have to look at recent stadium deals that are similar to our market. Nashville's one, and Buffalo's one. How are those deals structured financially and in other terms? And that is not to say they'd be the same, but that is at least a blueprint of what the NFL would probably expect.
I would also argue, maybe to counter that point, but also just for the simple discussion point, where else would the Jags go? I mean, Jacksonville is one of the few growing markets that doesn't already have a team. To me, there's a lot of things going for Jacksonville.
I don't think, look, they've demonstrated their commitment to Jacksonville.
Right.
I think that talking point that, there's still people that are saying, we're going to lose the team. Both parties, the city, the incoming mayor's administration, and the Jags want to reach a deal. The question is, what do the terms of that deal look like? And it has to be terms that both parties here agree to, but the NFL agrees to. And I think it's helpful for the taxpayer to know that. And the starting point is a blueprint of where have recent stadiums been done that are markets similar to Jacksonville, and that is Nashville and Buffalo.
Perfect.
So if the owner, for example, wanted to say, you know what, I'm going to fund the whole stadium.
Right.
Are the other NFL owners going to agree to that? I mean, that's a fair question.
Yeah, and you could surmise they might not. We don't know. I mean, how did Jerry Jones get that deal?
Well, it's a different time and a different era,
right,
and a different market.
Right.
Because remember, the NFL is revenue sharing, and I mean, it's more complex than people realize, and it's a great value to have the team here.
Yeah. Do you think that? And I know everybody's got to go, but this stuff fascinates me. Do you think, though, that there needs to be a better job of putting a dollar figure on that value? Because I think it comes back to that a lot, and people will lose that argument because they can't put a dollar figure on it, right? Like in other words, the argument is, well, dollars and cents doesn't make sense, and you might have a hard time saying.
How do you value? Yeah.
How do you put a value on what the Jags mean to Jacksonville?
Someone could probably commission a study, and that's probably not a bad idea, with an economist or an expert that would demonstrate all the value they bring, both in terms of dollars that come in for local businesses, brand, the earned media that we get nationally and internationally. I think that's a great idea.